Greetings to everyone. Welcome to Datagaps webinar. I'm Pooja Gupta, Growth Marketing Manager at Datagaps, and I would like to thank you all for joining us today. Before we get started, we have a couple of quick housekeeping comments. First, we have muted all mics to avoid unintended distractions. Next, the chat room is open so that you can interact with us through the chat. And finally, at the end of the session, we will open it up for Q&A. So today in this webinar, we will share how you can gain invaluable insights into the challenges and solutions for ensuring data accuracy and efficiency. And also you will discover that how you can streamline your compliance process, reduce errors, and avoid costly penalties. On the panel today, we have Mr. GV Rao, VP of Strategic Growth at Datagaps, and Shubhanshu Dikshit, Product Manager at Datagaps. And here is our agenda for today's webinar. So first, we will share the introduction to Datagaps DataOps Suite and how we can use DataOps Suite for APCD submissions. Next, we will share a glimpse of APCD and challenges in APCD submissions. Then we will share data validation flow and key benefits of using DataOps Suite for APCD submissions. Thereafter, we will have live demonstration to experience a live showcase of DataOps Suite in action and highlighting its capabilities and ease of use. And it will be followed by Q&A session. Now we have included a couple of polls as well, which will reflect in the middle of the session. And I would like to request every attendee to share their feedback by answering all questions. And now I hand this over to GV. GV, stage is all yours.
Thank you so much, Pooja. And thank you everyone for joining. Good morning and good afternoon, depending on the region that you are in. My name is GV Rao. People call me as GV. The full name is Venkateshwar Gopiseti. Today, I'll just take a little time on giving a brief about Datagaps as a company. What does DataOps Suite do? Won't take much time on that. The most important thing that we're going to talk about is how do we do APCD submissions and how does DataOps Suite help you do it, help you automate and help you make it easy. So Datagaps has been there for over 11 years, working with multiple Fortune 500 clients. The 4 of the top system integrators, 3 of the large Tableau users, large financial services organizations, large analyst organization. You talk of anything, we have about 100 plus customers using the Datagaps Suite in automating their testing of data through the ETL pipelines or on the analytics. But what is more important is what we have been working with one of the top 3 healthcare insurance company for the last 7 years, helping them do the APCD submissions. I presume people who are on the call have known about APCD a lot more than what I can talk about. We'll get into the details there. On a quick note, just give a couple of minutes, is what is DataOps as a suite? It actually does 5 things. It has an ETL validator when data is moving across the data pipelines, maybe from an enterprise warehouse to a cloud warehouse. Managing the quality of the data when the data is moving or data is static. When it moves into the analytics part of it, validation of a Power BI report, a Tableau report, or an OBI reports, right, or any other kind of a report, it does that and sets up the data flows, and also it helps you create test data for synthetic test data in case you want to not touch the production, but at the same time want to understand what is the performance. So essentially regression testing, performance testing, upgrade testing, it does everything. We are an ISO 27001 company, SOC 2 Type 2. So the advantage is, we'll get into the details of it, but the advantage is we sit in the premises of the customer. So in that way, there is no issue on any data security, data compliance, or any government regulations. This gives you a larger picture. We talk to every kind of a data source. That is about 200 plus data sources. We actually engage initially in doing a data quality monitoring. We probably have a data quality score. We have a low code, 0 code rules for setting up the data rules to check on the data quality. We do anomaly detection and data profiling as and when needed, depends on what the use case is. But essentially, you're talking about multiple data sources that can be used. we do the data quality monitoring, we do the data compare when the data is moving between the enterprise warehouse to cloud warehouse or anything, right? Between two different applications, when the data is moving, we do the complete data compare on 100% validation. We do that both on the testing and the production. And once in production, if it moves into the analytics, we do the complete BI validation. Sits on multiple platforms, whichever you talk of. So in that way, it is pretty agile, adaptable, and scalable. So we'll not get into the details of the technology behind it, but the fact remains is we do an end-to-end data testing automation. Now, coming on to how do we leverage the power of this DataOps suite for APCD submissions, which is nothing but an all-payers claims database, right? A couple of thoughts that come to my mind, right? When you're talking of Atul Bute, who is from Stanford, he said, hiding within those mounds of data is knowledge that could change the life of a patient or change the world. And all of you are aware that APCD, one of the major requirement or the need for APCD is to see how do we get the data across in improving the patient healthcare system and also tracking out things for us. The second is when you have a data, I kind of have to be a master of cleaning, extracting and trusting my data before I do anything, right? So that is where DataOps Suite comes into the picture. We're not talking about cleaning of data, but we are going to compare data, validate data, reconcile data, so that you have a trusted data that you can actually submit. This is for the people who don't come from an APCD industry or probably are just getting into the APCD part of it. This all-payer claims database, it actually collects data on health insurance, both from public and private insurance plans in the US, and it is done by every state. Now, the APCD, the last that when I looked at, is there in 25 states. Some of them are probably in the place of implementation, 18 are complete. And it is a mandatory for every health insurance company to go ahead and submit that data. But there is a variation in the data request processes across all the states. There is a variation in not only the data request process, the data layout, right? While there is a common data layout that is being discussed, APCDs and the nodal organizations, like we are a part of NADO, which is a nodal organizations helping out on APCDs and helping out on the common data layout. So we have an early view into what are the changes that are happening. While that is there, still every state has its own rules and sets. Now, coming on to this, when monthly reporting by all payers to all states, that is, suppose you say 25 states, and every time you have 150 plus rules in some of the reports, you just imagine what is the size, complexity, and criticality of the data. Added to it, that there is a regulatory requirement that the data has to be 100% or probably within the confidence levels for submission. So any wrong submissions also can attract a penalty, but that is not the point here. So what are the challenges in these submissions? Because of the complex compliance requirements, where everything, right from data duplicity, what should be the length of a data, how should a data be reflected, multiple states having different submission requirements. And at the same time, in order to harmonize across the states, the CDL keeps changing, the common data layout keeps changing. So for every individual insurance provider, when they have to submit a data, they have to keep a track on the changes, they keep a track on the submission requirements and validate it back. And if you do it manually to adhere to these complex requirements, there is a high risk of errors. People do it. I've heard of cases where people have submitted, the APCDs in the states actually look at it, then they go back, then they have to negotiate it, understand what it is, correct it, right? So there is a lot of operational inefficiencies that creep into the thing. Other one, when you have more and more states getting added into APCD, there is an issue of scaling, because more the number of states, more the volume, more the number of rules, and more the differences that you have to manage. And this data is coming from three different things. It's from the pharmacy claims, from the dental claims, from the medical claims. So it's a diverse data. And how is the data integrated? So the easiest thing what people do is take the files, put the files through, you have manually looking at it, validating it. You build the rules over a period of time and see to it that everything is right and corrected. So to address these challenges is where the DataOps Suite comes into the place. What we have done is we have pre-built the rule sets for each state. And as I said, one of the top insurance companies, when it is using, it is only using the rules that are already inbuilt into the DataOps Suite system. And these rules are different for each state, different submissions, and different reports. So that leads into an automated validation of the data, right? And at the same time, these data has to come from different systems. Either it is coming from different source systems or it is coming in files, but there should be a platform that could actually integrate into these systems, connect into these systems, extract the data, and validate it, right? When you're talking of automated data validation, the low code should not be restricted to the test cases or the data quality rules, but it also should be low code enough for somebody to connect to different sources. And how do you actually get an alert? How do you report the data? The alerts are needed when there are mistakes in the data, when probably the data is not being reported in the right way. The first set of data that is coming through, how do we do that? So in summary, you have a pre-built rule sets for each state in the DataOps Suite, which helps automate the data validation by bringing in data from different systems just through a low-code integration and giving you an alerts and showing you reports that you can go ahead, validate, and submit. I'll just take a couple of minutes to take you through what is the data validation flow that we use, or any payer the insurance companies use for this, right? So it's a norm most of the time, right? You have different sets of data. It could be JDBC connectors. It could be CSV files for people who are coming from the technology part of it. It could be any kind of a source. We support something like 200 plus sources. So the data then moves into the claims, whatever the claims that are eligible, right? So that is what is being extracted. And when this extraction happens and it comes into the DataOps Suite validates it by the thresholds and by the rules that are built in for each of the state, which are actually configurable and we have already configured into the system. You just start actually connecting the source to this particular DataOps Suite. And it in terms validates whether the data that is being projected in the report is correct or is there an inaccuracy. And that is where you come up to the validated data and then inaccurate data. And if there is an inaccurate data, this data is sent back to when you say the vendor, it is the insurance. So I'm sure you have people here on the call who are from the insurance industry. You also have people from the APCDs who probably are the submission, who actually take the submissions, and people who are just on the quality side. But the fact here, when we are trying to represent the insurance company itself, or the person who is sitting in the insurance company validating this, to go back, look at that, correct the data, send it back. So once all the thresholds are met and it is over a required standard, is where those reports are getting submitted to the state APCDs. And when you're looking at this as one particular state-specific pipeline, the advantage that this brings to the table is multiple state-specific pipelines are run in parallel. So essentially what you try to do, I'll come to, when I talk to the benefits, I'll get to that. But the fact remains is, during the Q&A session, I would like to understand what is the time that you people take, but normally it is about a 1 to 2 week period where people actually prepare this report, send it out. And here you're doing that within few hours for all the states. and with all the validations. So you're talking of 100% things, right? And this is connected into the notification reporting in terms of where you get an email where things are wrong, if the data has something to be corrected, and the complete approval workflow is built into it. And this is the complete validation workflow without getting into the technology nitty-gritties, which Shubhanshu, my colleague, is going to show a little later. So these are the key benefits when you talk of it. You're talking about 100% accurate reports just to stay compliant across for whatever that has been defined under the No Surprise Act, right? So the APCDs are defined under the No Surprise Act, and we try to work with the common data layout. So 100% accuracy in the reports. Repeatability, it's a one-time setup and run every month. It makes it easier. Parallel validation for multiple states. It's highly scalable and reliable. And because of that, you're talking of reducing the reduction in time for submissions by almost 80%. And this also increases the integration. The cost reduction also adds up because you're doing a pre-built integrations to the source systems. So essentially what we're talking of is a low TCO and a high ROI with 100% accuracy. I'll just leave it here and hand it over to Shubhanshu.
Hi guys, let me start sharing my screen. All right, thank you. So let's jump into it. So when we talk about these type of validations, there are some technical nitty-gritties we have to first kind of wrap up first. The first one is that we're working with claims data. This is inherently PII data set, and this is for a lot of compliance, not just HIPAA. So one of the key questions comes in is that, well, where exactly is this validation going to take place? Because I can't really send this data out to a third party without going through a truckload of compliance forms and other epics. And we understand that with our wide variety of clients ranging from the pharmaceutical domain to the financial domain. And the easy solution that the application provides is that the application itself can be installed directly onto your infrastructure. See, we are pretty agnostic in terms of what cloud provider you might be using, or if you are preferring something in terms of bare metal, the application has support for those as well. And thus you get complete control over where your data sets reside, and the application does not even track back logs. So that just goes to the extent to where exactly we have been reaching to solve this particular type of problem where data sets can't really be shared outside. That's one of the critical things. Of course, us being Spark based allows our application to work with a really huge volume of data and high throughput requirements as well. More details on the architecture and compliance, we of course request you to have a proper connect. You can also send questions now, but I just wanted to start with this so that there are no concerns about compliance as we move forward with the demo. Being said, now let's jump into the sources. That's the screen that you see right now. You see there's a good chunk of sources that the application has inherent connectivity with. Now, depending on your use case, you might like to run validations directly onto the TXT files that the application, or in this case, the governing body requests, or perhaps you'd like to run the validation a couple of steps earlier to ensure that those particular file sets or data sets are correct. The main aspect here is that the application can connect to all the variety of sources that you see. And of course, you can add a bunch more sources using the CData connector, the generic connector, as well as the API connector. For us, everything is treated as a Spark data frame connection. So it does not matter if you're working with any specific type of connection. The functionality can be translated from one system to the other easily. Now that we've done that, let's jump into a couple of use cases on what we're trying to work with. Now, of course, we are under the impression that you have a lot of specific use cases here, but I'm going to just go ahead with a simple use case, and that goes into a CO showcase specifically. Now, we see we have PC, CHIV, PC, and other aspects as well. And anyone who has worked in these data sets know what I'm talking about. But for the other folks, this is the guideline document that you have to relate to actually go through the validation use cases. So this is one that has been provided specifically for Colorado. And again, it's a 144-page document that goes through a tremendous detail of exactly what is required. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire document itself. What I've done is one step better, which is just create a few screenshots on what we're trying to expect from this. So as you'll see, there's a lot of variations that we have to look into. And when we're talking about a file, it's not just a validation of data. In fact, even the file needs to be validated. It needs to use the correct systems. It needs to be in the correct encoding, correct delimiters, correct file naming schemes, and everything in between as well. Even this part of the application, or in this case, the test case, will be validated by the application inherently. You see, we have plugins and customized code components which can take care of these type of validations inherently. And if you want to say edit them and add your own customizability, you can do that as well. This particular aspect of file format validation is done within our application in the plugin component. That's what you see as this particular system, where we actually get a lot of options for the end user to decide how they want to work on this particular file set. As you'll see, you get options to save them, to push to a particular data source and other aspects as well. And what this basically entails is once a particular file set has been validated, where do you want to push it? Of course, there's one caveat here as well that you can actually do, which is segregating your good and bad records. In my examples, you'll see that while we do apply all the rules which are present in the submission guideline, the application has a neat trick to segregate the good and bad records for you. Of course, the real nature of this particular problem statement requires you to fix the bad records, but having the set of bad records segregated on a rule level basis so that you're aware exactly what has failed and why this particular system has failed is very helpful for the end user. Also, the sheer list of parameters present right here, which can be automatically filled as well, really helps the end user to understand how exactly this particular application works, and of course, gives the end user a lot of control over what type of test case they would like to create. So now let's jump into what exactly we're looking at. You see, what we're looking at is a particular subset of a test case. There are a lot more complex test cases here as well. And what they get into are the different variety of file types and the different data rules associated with them. So if I go back to my slideshow again, you'll see that every particular file set, in this case, we'll be focusing on the pharmaceutical claims file set, has a lot of specific columns. These are the data elements associated, and these data elements are subject to rules. These rules are metadata rules, length rules, or something as the description for P005 defines, where the line for this particular service should start at 1 and should only increment if there's an additional claim defined. In the next page, we see that much more slides, and they have a lot of different variety of rules. In fact, my favorite one here is PC012, which actually goes in to understand what are different values for genders, which in this case is MFXU, which is pretty fine. But in other use cases where you have domains which are true, false, or not applicable, in that case, you will see a variety within the submission guide, where some cases you have true, false, and X, and in other cases you have true, false, and U instead of X. So as you can imagine, it's quite a headache for an end user to actually make sure that all the rules have been correctly applied here. What we do is that we create these rule sets inherently for you to use. And those rule sets are present right here. We have a complete set of rule sets, and these rule sets are the ones which are common across multiple states. And of course, within this particular showcase for Colorado, we have added a couple of Colorado specific use cases as well. But the main gist here is twofold. Firstly, the example you're seeing is for a specific file type. So again, that's some caveats there. However, if you want to apply it in mass, all the rules that you see can be imported and exported. This implies that any custom rules that you make can also be easily deployed to multiple states and multiple files. We, however, use this template system to create the rules preemptively, and then depending on the state you're working with, define exactly what type of rule sets you would like to deploy altogether. Again, it's a simple process where you want to define what type of files you're working with. Are you working with those TXT files? Are you working with those data sets? And then correspondingly, just import the rules directly to run the system. It's as simple as that. There are wizards and programmatically generated test cases to help you speed up this process further. So let's take a quick look on what these particular rule sets are. Well, a few of them just want to make sure that there are no corresponding full stops within this particular data set. Some of them want to ensure that a particular zip ID is actually accurate. And so far, we're working with SQL. However, there are other tool sets as well, as you can see, which go into not SQL. So here you see there's a particular PC024D, which has this rule set that it should either be null or should be US. And instead of going for a SQL use case, what we've done is that we've used an operator. And this is not the only use case of operator that you'll see. You'll see the operators that the application provides inherently are quite varied and are built to withstand a lot more variety of use cases than just insurance claims, in this case, medical insurance claims. We deal with pharmaceutical claims, we deal with financial data sets, holdings companies, logistics, and a lot more. And so the list of operators, while it's pretty good that we provide inherently, can be expanded quite considerably as well. One of the use cases that you might see is that in many financial columns in the APCD dataset claiming guide, you'll have this requirement where a financial column cannot have say punctuations, cannot have commas, cannot have currency signs as well. And so these rule sets can be combined together to create a very simple operator, and the application and end user can just deploy the operator as is. But of course, in this case, you don't even have to go ahead to do that. You can just import the rules as is. The next one that I want to elaborate with while showcasing these screens and while showcasing this different type of rule sets is that you as an end user get complete control over what has been deployed. Yes, the kind of philosophy of ours is to help you set this up as quickly as possible and so that you can use it directly within your system. However, if you want to define something, if you want to customize something, and if you want to change something in bulk, in scale, you get complete control over that. And that's one of the critical things. Of course, the rule sets themselves are quite varied and quite considerably large. I mean, this is a subset of what we are looking at. So let's see what the end users actually sees in this. And just to give you a brief overview of what we are trying to do with these systems, you see what we are trying to do is that we are opening a particular file that has supposed to be sent out. And we are firstly validating the file inherently, defining where the good and bad records will be stored in, how exactly they'll be stored in. And then once these are loaded in, for the sake of simplicity for the user, we choose to rename them as we expected. Again, even renaming here, while you can define custom expressions, you can, of course, use simple rename conditions that we have defined. Again, you have complete control here. In fact, if you would like to run SQL nodes, Scala nodes, Python nodes, any custom scripts, you have complete control. The validation that we are looking at this point is a rule-based validation. However, within this particular subscreen of the application, you see that the application is capable of a lot more. We can do reconciliation of data, the entire record set, metrics, a bit of multiple data comparisons, and of course, a good chunk of BI validations as well. And since the application is customizable even in this particular stage, the test cases you define are completely within your control and your space. That's what's basically is happening here. We have a couple of files being combined, and there are another set of rules that we run here, which are a lot more conditional rules, which go into the civic validation specifically and thresholds in comparison. So these rules actually take into account the thresholding, which is specific to this state and the specific file, which can change based on your requirement. Hence, the civic threshold comes in from a specific file set itself. And in another use case, we are actually validating the raw file itself that we have generated. So now that we have done all of this, let's see what it looks as from the end user perspective. Every run that you do is going to be saved. We're going to keep track of any parameters that you might have defined. We're going to keep track of every run detail, including the duration, checkpoints, and other aspects. But as an end user, what you're going to get is a nice report that can be customized as well. It is going to contain all the details of what exactly has happened. Here, you'll get the details of what was the exact definition of what you were trying to run. You also get details on what were the different type of rules that you're trying to work with as well. So here we see that there's a lot of rules which have failed and a lot of rules which have succeeded. There are good failures where expected length has been kind of pushed ahead more than expected. There are rules where there are other things missing. And so each of them have been given specific records and rule sets. And since this is an example, we have gone in with absolutes. However, if there were only a couple of records which have been mismatched, those will be segregated and the score will be defined accordingly. Finally, if there are no corresponding failures, the application just calls out that this particular rule set is perfectly fine and the data set is also perfectly correct. Going back to what we were showcasing earlier, let me just go that one. Yeah. You'll see that within our application, it's not just this particular aspect. This particular rule set is not the end. What you can choose to do, of course, is add a lot more components to your system. I'm going to go into plugins right here. And I want to make sure that, well, we can raise Jira tickets automatically in case rules are failing. So that's exactly what I do. I can add, of course, some specific configurations, but what this looks like from an end user perspective is, let me just rename this once. These Jira tickets. There you go. What this looks like from the end user perspective is that, well, now even a bit of my data ops or DevOps process is automated. The automation and the integrations don't stop here. If you're using an existing integration tool sets, like maybe Airflows, or if you're using Azure DevOps or pipelines, the application has bidirectional connectivity with not just the ones I've mentioned, but a lot more types of integration pipelines as well. It's not just Jira tickets. We're working with Slack notifications. We work with Teams notifications and a lot of other aspects as well. There's a lot of things that we have packed within this product that we don't really have the time to get into. But this particular example should be just an illustration or kind of a sneak peek into what the product is capable of. Once again, what you've seen is an example for one specific use case. Once we get into the gist of things, we'll have to deploy these type of validations across multiple states, across multiple systems altogether. And that is where the scale of the application and the automation aspects really come in. And that's basically what justifies the numbers that GV was showcasing at the start, where an 80% reduction is TCO is because we have automated most of the things for the end user. And all they have to do in most cases is, in some cases at least, just review them. However, even that can be automated to a good chunk. and look at the results and see exactly what this particular data sets have wrong. Of course, there's reconciliation pipelines as well, but for now, I will take a pause on that and give this back to GV to see if there are any questions. And of course, if there are any other aspects, we can have a deep dive in them specifically if needed.
Thank you, Shivanshu.
Okay, yeah. Thanks. Thank you, everyone. So yes, we do have a couple of questions. First is what sort of customization can be done with these rules, and can we add our own rules as well?
Absolutely. The rule set that you're working with right here is a defined rule set, yes, but however, the templates that you're working with can be customized to your own use cases as well. You can add n number of rules and you can customize them to a great degree. And this is not just SQL expression and attribute rules. You can add your own type of rules as well with the preordained list of operators, which can be expanded and customized as well. So the customization is not just with regards to the rule set, it's also with regards to what you want to do before or after the validation. So customization and keeping it open is one of the philosophies of the product.
Okay, thanks, Manshu. And the next question is that if we want the application to integrate with with our own DataOps or DevOps pipeline, is it possible to do that as well?
The application has inherent connectivities to integrate with your existing test plans, with your existing pipelines, not just our own, as well as help with scheduling with trigger-based systems such as Lambda, or just a simple example where if a file is ready, you would like to run validations instantly. You don't want someone to go in and manually click on running this particular test case. The application has automation in spades with regards to not just running these pipelines, but also creating these test cases and rule sets.
Thanks, Manshu. And thanks everyone for staying with us for this whole time. Also, I would like to thank GV for deep understanding on how we can use Datagaps DataOps Suite for APCD submissions, and Shivanshu, you for an extensive demo of DataOps Suite for automated testing for APCD submissions and its data flow explanation now. And I have also I'll be also pasting the link for the DataOps Suite free trial in the chat. If you have any specific set of use cases to look at, our team can help you with a personalized demo, and you can drop a note to contact@datagaps.com.